say. Delegate from Richmond City, Delegate McQuinn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise for a point of personal privilege.
Delegate has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker and ladies and gentlemen, we have convened here today to do what responsible legislators do. Historically, our Virginia legislative body boasts of being the oldest in the country, and we have been elected, just as our predecessors were, to do a most sacred job. And that is to identify, to study, to resolve problems and issues that impact the health and safety and the welfare of our citizens here in the Commonwealth by enacting reasonable legislation to address some of those problems. And I must say we do a pretty good job when it comes to most issues that arise. But when research indicates that the incidence of babies and children dying in car accident had increased, then there was a direct correlation between those deaths and children not being in car seats. We mandated that children must be secured in car seats. And as adults, we must all wear seat belts for our safety and protection. We have even enacted laws that deal with cruelty and harmful treatment of pets. Who remember the recent heart-wrenching story of a little dog named Tommy who was tied to a fence and burned? How did we respond? We took reasonable action and enacted legislation called Tommy's Law because of that situation. So we're here today to continue to address issues of public safety and welfare of our communities. Because we're dealing with a crisis where violence and death, malicious wounding, maiming, and trauma for thousands of young and old, men, women, and children and babies, when mass shootings and single and double and triple homicides are a daily event, when assault weapons and silencers and bump stocks are routine gun accessories, when the expense of life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness is diminished by those who claim to have an unregulated right to the possession of a gun. We're here as legislators to do our business, to do our work. Just recently, I attended the funeral of a 9-year-old little Micaiah Dixon. I sat there heartbroken and traumatized at the impact of her life on so many people, of her death on so many people. Just a little 9-year-old girl who was playing in the park and having fun like most little 9-year-olds do, when violence struck and she lost her life that day. It truly was a traumatizing moment for me. But I was even more traumatized when I sat there and had a flashback to 1994, when I was at the Arthur Ashe Center, and in front of that center were 6 caskets of individuals whose lives were lost because of gun violence. A 35-year-old, a 29-year-old, a 9-year-old, 4-year-old, 3-year-old. And because of one young lady who was 14-year-old, the assailant shot her and she was pregnant with a 7-month pregnancy. And so once again, I reflected and thought about that day, which was again traumatizing. I'm asking today, who is really controlling the narrative? Why is there no room for reasonable legislators to reach some common ground and enact some common sense gun legislation. Someone needs to explain to me, why are there no laws, it continue to be barriers preventing laws from being put in place to protect the citizens of our Commonwealth? Our job is to do our due diligence, to talk to the people who have been affected by gun violence, to conduct research, to read literature, to have an open mind and think critically, and then to vote on reasonable legislation based on values and not the values of the NRA. The pain and the blood of the victims of gun violence lay squarely at our feet, our beautiful Commonwealth. Now the victim of 2 mass shootings in the home of thousands of gun deaths each year, we must begin to rewrite, and look at a new narrative, and it needs to start today with a true commitment to do what is right. Dr. King said that it is always the right time to do what is right. I spoke before the General Assembly in 1993 about the 1 gun a month bill that they were trying to move forward. Today I ask, how much longer will we, thoughtful and caring legislators? Jeff was right, there are great folks who are in this legislative body. But how long are we going to allow ourselves to be held hostage by others? We are held hostage and might as well have a gun at our head and heart. People of goodwill. The narrative that continue to be forced upon us, saying that we are trying to take guns away. I know individuals in the NRA, they too want change, but they are looking at the leadership of the NRA who refuse to move. No longer should we allow people to, again, control our hearts, to hold a gun at our hearts and head. The head is the command unit for our thinking process. And out of it comes the issue of intellectual reasoning and the common sense objectives. But out of the heart flows the issues of life. And for entirely too long in this country and Commonwealth, there have been individuals who have been advocating not for the rights of those to live, but for second right amendments that have been imposed upon us, trying to tell us that we're saying we're trying to take people guns away, which is untruth. And so let us do what is right today. For the sake of public safety, for the sake of saving lives, and for the sake of making a difference. We can do it, and we must, Mr. Speaker. No longer shall we, or should we, continue to allow our state to deal with something that we know that we have some control over. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.